So one of my favorite church fathers is this guy named Polycarp. He was one of the leaders of the church in the 2nd century during a time of intense persecution of Christians. And at one point, he got arrested by the Romans, and they told him that if he didn't deny Jesus and swear allegiance to the Caesars, then they'd burn him at the stake. And Polycarp said, "I am not in the habit of repenting of what is good to turn to what is evil. 86 years I've served him, and he's done me no harm. I don't plan to deny Jesus now." So they burned him at the stake. Except for Polycarp didn't burn. As this whole group of Christians and Roman soldiers and government officials looked on, his body didn't burn. He just stood there in the middle of the fire praying. And so one of the officials ordered a soldier to go up and stab him, and they went and pierced Polycarp in the side with a sword. And so much blood flowed out of his body that it extinguished the fire. I'm just in awe of the miraculous workings of God and of the church fathers and the heroes throughout the history, the last few thousand years, who have willingly given their lives to point people towards Jesus. Heroes like Polycarp. We've been in this series, The Last Arrow, talking about what it looks like to live fully and die fulfilled, to accept God's invitation to the lives of meaning and purpose and difference making that He created us for. And for most of us, it won't end the way it did for Polycarp. We're not going to be burned at the stake for following Jesus. But for all of us, if we're going to make our lives count, we're going to have to find some ground we're willing to stand on and fight for. We're going to have to let God break our heart for something that's broken in this world and be willing to stand up and stand out and fight to help heal up what's broken. And it'll always be a fight. We exist in this shattered, messed up space that wants to keep broken people broken and hurting people hurting and lost people lost and people living in darkness from seeing the light. And so we have a fight on our hands. Because as soon as we know Jesus, we become citizens, not just of this world, but citizens of a rebel kingdom. And the rebel kingdom is at war. It's at war with the darkness around us. And if we're going to be who God created us to be, we have to be warriors, willing to fight to bring Jesus to all the people all around us every day who are yearning, dying, desperate for the oxygen of His love. And I think the thing that holds us back from doing that, the thing that keeps us from it, isn't just selfishness, it's fear. It's fear. Fear is a cruel mistress and an even crueler master. It's a prison that continually holds us back, that keeps us back, not just from doing big things, but from doing things that we even want to do. Things that our hearts are tugging us towards, but we're afraid. We're afraid if we stand up and stand out, there'll be consequences. We're afraid that if we find a plot of ground God's asked us to stand on, and we stand and we're willing to fight for it, we're willing to fight against injustice and oppression and evil that we see around us, that maybe God will abandon us out there and that He won't show up. But the thing is, He promises us that He will. That when we stand and fight in the places He's asked us to stand and fight, He will be there, and there's only one way we're ever going to find out whether His promises are true. And it's to try it. There's this incredible scene at the end of Prince Caspian. It's one of the books in the Chronicles of Narnia series where Aslan, the lion, who's the Christ figure in these books, is talking to one of the little kids, Lucy, and they haven't seen each other in a little over a year, I think. And Lucy looks at Aslan and says, "Aslan, you've grown bigger." And he looks back at her and says, "That's because you're a little bit older." And she's confused, and she looks back at Aslan and says, "It's because I'm a little older, not because you are?" And he says, "No, I'm not, but you'll find me a little bigger every year you grow." I love the way C.S. Lewis writes that, because I think it's this profound picture of how much bigger God gets when we grow in our faith. Every time we walk out, every time we stand up, every time we find the field that we'll stand in and say, "This is the ground God's asked me to fight for. This is the cause God's asked me to give myself to," what we find when He shows up is that He becomes bigger in our lives. As our faith grows, as we grow in maturity, as we walk into the places He's asked us to walk and do the things He's asked us to do, God gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and fear gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So the question for you is, where is it that you'll stand and fight? If you're going to really make your life count, what cause, what ground is God tugging at your heart for and asking you to boldly stand up and fight for? And you may fail along the way. All of us may fail along the way sometimes. The only way to celebrate victory is to risk defeat. But what are we willing to fight for? Because I want to be a person, and I want to be a church that's willing to stand up and fight against the things that are not okay in this world and the things that are not okay in this city. I just think too often I look at the church, like the Big C church in the world, and particularly in the United States of America, and I feel like we're just walking backwards into the future. Just looking at the past, longing for the past, wishing we could go back and fighting against the culture around us. And I want to raise the bar. I want to do it differently. I don't want to run in fear. I don't want to hide out. I don't want to just huddle in our little Christian circles, safe and cut off from the world. I don't want to fight Des Moines. I want to fight for Des Moines. I want us to be a people who are willing to look out at the things and the people in this city who are hurting and broken and say, look, we're going to fight for you because there's a God who stepped out of eternity into history and gave his life so that you could be forgiven and set free, and he changed everything for us. He can change everything for you. What if we did that? What if we decided that's how we're going to live our lives? Like, will you let God break your heart for something? Will you find the ground that he's asking you to stand on, and will you trust they'll meet you there? I think it's interesting, as humans, most of us pick our burial plot long before we'll be buried. I just know so many people, even good people that I love, people that I trust, people that I love, good Christian people, but I know so many people who spend a lot more time thinking about where they will die than thinking about how they will live. And I just challenge you tonight to forget thinking about where you'll die and think about how you'll live, to pray, to ask God to tug at your heart for something, for somewhere where he's asking you to stand, and to trust that he'll meet you there, to hop in the fight and stand your ground until the last arrow is spent. Because I think if we do that, we can change the flavor of this city.